In this masterclass, we're focusing on a form of compression that can add punch or snap to sounds such as kicks and snares. It's a technique that fine-tunes the attack and release stages of your compressor and is a very audible effect. The effect does take a bit of tweaking to get right, and you'll find some compressors are simply better at it than others. VCA or FET-based designs seem to work best, and we'll try various options to hear the differences. To get started, grab some suitable sounds that aren't already heavily processed. We're starting with a raw 909 snare. This is a sort of sound that can be perfect in its original state, but for some applications can sound a bit weedy. Compression can help resolve that. We've loaded up an instance of Logic's compressor, which includes multiple compressor types, but you can use any plugin that models the types of compressors we're using. Let's start with a VCA design. This should provide not only flexible attack and release, but also adjustable knee shape. And if your compressor includes automatic gain makeup, then switch this off. Set up a medium ratio, we've gone for about 5:1, and if you have the option, set the knee shape to hard. Our default attack and release settings are set to about 15 milliseconds and 20 milliseconds respectively, and we've switched off the auto release. Next up, lower the threshold to get some gain reduction. Here we've got about 10 dB of reduction, and the compression is certainly adding fatness to the sound, but it's not really punchy yet. To get the snap effect, focus on the attack and release controls. Start by sweeping the attack. You'll hear at its fastest settings the snare attack is hammered down. But as you ease it back, the attack is more audible. We've set ours to about 20 milliseconds. Now focus on the release. At the fastest release times, the decay of the snare is more obvious, but as we increase the decay time, the initial snap of the attack becomes clearer. For us, this sounds pretty good at around 200 milliseconds, but this number will vary a lot depending on the compressor and sounds you're working on. Now let's try some different compressor types. Firstly, FET. In this instance, the design is more responsive. Adjusting the threshold to achieve similar gain reduction, we can then also modify the attack and release accordingly. We've set the attack and release to 20 milliseconds and 100 milliseconds respectively for a really snappy sound. Next up, we're trying an opto style compressor. Here we've had to reduce the threshold to get the right response. And we've also set the attack and release quite fast, about 10 milliseconds and 50 milliseconds respectively. The effect is very fat, but lacks the snap of the other two compressors. If you have a modern linear door style compressor, then try that. Here we've set the attack and release to 20 milliseconds and 140 milliseconds respectively. Finally, once you get into reshaping sounds using the attack and release characteristics of a compressor, you should also consider, as an alternative, using an enveloper or transient shaper. These can achieve quite extreme outcomes, and it's easy to overdo it, so make sure you A/B as you go.